Mr. Speaker.
I call Jonah Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to start this speech off with joining with my parliamentary colleagues from right across this House in acknowledging the passing today of Celia Lashley. I was privileged to work alongside Celia when I was a part of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, and she was a really critical component to a lot of the work that we did around the countryside, and she did some great work in assisting mayors around New Zealand in the way that we were working with young people. She did some great work in so many other fields that others have talked about. She was somebody who was absolutely uncompromising. And it was always a challenge to be in a room with her because she challenged the way you were thinking, she challenged the way things were being done, and she, I think, inspired us all to do a better job in New Zealand to decrease the number of young people who would find their ways into prisons, to decrease the number of families who were having to live in a state of dysfunction. And she was somebody who I think in her own way brought a great deal of encouragement alongside the challenges that she brought as well. And New Zealand will be not as good a place for her passing, and so I think it is fitting that we do acknowledge that, and as I said, want to join with my parliamentary colleagues in acknowledging that great work that she has done. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn my attention to this Social Security Amendment Bill. And of course it is in sort of two major parts that we've been talking about in terms of the student accommodation allowance and the loopholes there, and also accident compensation payments. And I want to address each of those in turn. And starting with the area around student accommodation allowances, as a parent of two tertiary students, part of me thinks it would be quite great if I could find a loophole so that they would be able to generate more money, because frankly it would mean that I would be better off because I wouldn't be having to pay for so much. But that said, this is not about what's good for me. This is about what is good for the whole of New Zealand. This is about what is fair, and so that's what this bill is about. It's about fairness, Mr. Speaker. So from that perspective, I want to address the issues of fairness, about what's fair and what's not fair with regard to students in relation to this bill. It is absolutely fair, Mr. Speaker, that we do have accommodation supplements for people in New Zealand. It's absolutely important that for some people who, through whatever circumstances, find themselves in a challenging position and unable to pay their rent or pay the costs associated with their accommodation, that this, our social security system provides for them. So it is fair that we do have accommodation supplements. It is fair, Mr. Speaker, that students, whether they be from my household where they qualify for loans because of the generosity of the state in providing me the salary that they do, but my kids apply, are relevant.
Money well spent.
And very well spent, I think. Anyway, so my kids do qualify for loans, and that's appropriate for them to be able to get the kind of finances they need to get their way through their studies. And for other students who perhaps come from a less fortunate background to have access to student allowances, those numbers that they're able to access are essentially even and essentially fair, and I think that that's good. It's fair, Mr. Speaker, that students, tertiary students in this country, have access to education, tertiary education, which is to a large part subsidised by the government. It's a good investment by the government that we do invest in subsidising fees so that New Zealand students can get the education that is going to help them and help our country move forward. But what is not fair, Mr. Speaker, what is not fair is when we have loopholes in our system that some students are able to exploit, and we know it's been low numbers, but it is not fair when they are using our system to gain an unfair advantage over their peers to be able to qualify for more money. And so, Mr. Speaker, it's been great to hear the support from most of the other side of the House, apart from a particular voice which seems to be yelling constantly and not listening to a word that I'm saying. But Mr. Speaker, It is not fair when we have a system in place that ensures that we are not getting fairness in terms of what's happening here. So, Mr. Speaker, as we move forward with this bill, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things that have been said from the other side of the House. It's been interesting that I've heard accusations this afternoon that we do not care about tertiary students. Well, Mr. Speaker, we do care about tertiary students, and we have managed to ensure that there are still loans and allowances available to students. Mr. Speaker, if students in New Zealand are in such a bad state, as has been said by members opposite, why is it, as my colleagues have outlined today, that we are seeing the completion rates of degrees going through the roof? Why is it that Māori and Pacifica are getting better and better qualifications in this country? If this government is so bad for students, Mr. Speaker, why is it that we are seeing better achievement? And so, Mr. Speaker, this is a minor technical bill, and it's been asserted from the other side of the House that we've let it languish for 4 years when there's been... But, Mr. Speaker, there's been important work for us to do over the last 6 years that this government has been in place. You don't... Mr. Speaker, you don't undo the work of 9 long years of a Labour government simply in 5 minutes. And so, Mr. Speaker, this government has been working hard.
Order. I actually would like to hear what's being said. Joan O'Naylor.
I'd be keen to hear what I was saying myself, Mr. Speaker, to be fair. I thought it was great. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, as I said, you don't undo the work of 9 long years of Labour government in 5 minutes, and so this government has been working hard for New Zealand over the last 6 years to do this. In fact, actually, we've been talking about the minor nature of this bill, and so, yes, it might have not had the priority that other bills have had, and it is of a minor nature. It is an important bill, and it's one that we will pass and that we will progress. But, Mr. Speaker, we've had much more important things to deal with, and that's exactly what this government has been getting on with. Mr. Speaker, I just now want to turn my attention to the issues of the ACC payments that have been brought up also in this bill. Mr. Speaker, you've been waiting... and I don't want to disappoint members opposite who've been waiting so long.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. Order. The time has come for me to leave the chair. This debate is interrupted, and I shall resume the chair at 7:30.